I'm in love with the pizza all of the time. I'm in love with the pizza, pizza, all of the time, all of the time. I'm in love with the pizza all of the time. Give me a little P-I-C-A, that's a pizza. I'm a like the spaghetti, like spaghetti. Some of the time, some of the time. I'm a like spaghetti, like spaghetti. Some of the time, some of the time. I'm a like the spaghetti, like spaghetti. Some of the time, some of the time. But I'm in love with the pizza all of the time. I'm in love with the pizza, all of the time. I'm in love with the pizza, all of the time.
Pizza fans from across the globe, welcome back to Slice and Sip, podcast by the Pizza Gang here at DeMarco's Pizzeria and Wine Bar, located at 9785 West Charleston Boulevard here in Las Vegas, Nevada. DeMarco's gold medal for best pizza, best Italian restaurant, best outdoor dining. We're all sitting here on a beautiful day in March. The pasta is incredible. It's the happiest of happy hours. And the guy that makes it all happen is sitting here, Mike Scalleat.
It's such a beautiful day, and it's so nice here on the patio. It's unbelievable. If you haven't been here to check out the new patio, guys, you're missing the boat.
There's a lot of stuff happening here at Dom's, and you're here to tell us about it. We're going to start off with an extensive cocktail list, and if they don't want alcohol, you have this fantastic non-alcoholic beer. Tell us about the cocktails in the beer.
Well, let's start off with the beer, because we have some beers here from the Athletic Brewing Company. We have an IPA, we have the stout, and we have the golden. So if you're into beer, you got to try this, because the story behind it is great. It was a guy named Bill Shufelt, S-H-U-F-E-L-T. He's a big hedge fund guy from Wall Street, and he loved beer. But he was going a lot out, different meetings. He said, and by the time he got home every night, he was 3 sheets to the wind, right? So he tried all the non-alcoholic beers, and he said, they're terrible. They don't taste like beer. So he puts a group together, $350 million. They open a brewery in Connecticut. Sole purpose of this brewery is to make a non-alcoholic beer that tastes really good. Took them 13 months. They finally got it. They nailed it. And then they start selling beers. And around the country, it's taken off like crazy. So I brought it in here to Dom's, and I tried it out personally. I gave it to maybe 40 different people, and not telling them that it was non-alcoholic, and they all loved it. And when I told them it was non-alcoholic, they couldn't believe it. So I think if you want to have 10 beers, maybe you want to have 5 non-alcoholics, you try this beer. I think you're going to love it.
And I'll tell you this much. We've been doing trivia nights here on the patio. There was a couple of guys by me that had it recently at a trivia night, and they were talking about how good that beer tastes. And I'm not a beer drinker, and they asked me if I had tasted. I said, no, I'm not a beer drinker. But I said, if you're a beer drinker, you cannot tell the difference. This thing they loved it.
I can't say enough good things about it. But anyway, let's move on. We have a new cocktail list I want to talk about. But first I want to mention that we have now 32 wines by the glass. I don't know where you could go to get 32 different wines by the glass. They're all good ones. And if you come on Monday to Friday from 2 to 6, guess what? They're all half price. And also all bottles of wine from 2 to 6 are half price. So if you like good food and you like wine, or you like cocktails, whatever you like, and you're not coming to Dom's for happy hour, you're really missing out. Well, let me tell you a little bit about this cocktail list. I brought this guy named Max Solano. I brought him in. He goes all over the world teaching bars how to make these fancy cocktails. So we picked out 12 of them here, and they are just fantastic. In fact, we just started it this week, and I am pleasantly surprised at how well they're selling. People are loving them. So come in if you're a cocktail person. You got to come in and try it.
Well, tell me this.
Go ahead.
Outside of that, last time we were on the show, it wasn't going to be St. Patty's Day. It was going to be St. Patty's month. But how did that go?
I'm glad you brought that up. It went too well.
Okay.
What do I mean by too well?
Yes, tell me, please.
Well, we ran out of Guinness. We had so much. I said, we're going to have this Guinness for next St. Patty's Day. Didn't even last. It didn't last. We ran out of it, and we're trying to get it in now. and nobody has it. Everybody's out. So we'll find it somewhere. But the thing that was the showcase was the corned beef and cabbage and the shepherd's pie. We bought so much corned beef and cabbage that the chef said, we're going to have half of these left over. Well, Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock, the chef said, we're out of corned beef and cabbage. And I felt so bad because we had people coming, like a couple came from Henderson. Oh, we only came here to get the corned beef and cabbage. And they were kind of upset. And I don't blame them for being upset. But we had no idea that we would sell so much. But we'll be ready for next year.
You're going to order more corned beef and cabbage next year. Are we adding any new menu items?
Well, the newest menu items, people got to try them. My favorites are the short rib pizza. We got a short rib pizza that's out of this world. We got a short rib ravioli. We got a short rib pasta. Fantastic. My brother loves the short rib pasta. I love it too. I had it last night. People are going for like spicy pizzas, right? Well, if they want a real spicy pizza, they got to come in and try the bee sting. Alex named it appropriately when he named it the bee sting, because you get a little bee sting when you try it. One of my all-time favorites, and I say this all the time, is the Clam Pizza. Originated by a guy named Frank Pepe up on Wooster Street, New Haven, Connecticut in 1939. I had the pleasure of spending a lot of time in New Haven, Connecticut from the late 40s to the early 60s. And the fellow who we stayed at his house, his brother was a barber on Wooster Street, right next to Pepe's. So we used to go to Pepe's every day, and it's great pizza. But his clam pizza was fantastic. So he said, we got to put a clam pizza here. And we worked on it, and I have to say we actually improved it. I mean, it's a hot seller, the clam pizza. You got to try that. That's a great pizza.
And the one thing I know is you have a special guest coming that we'll have on the next Slice and Sip podcast. Tell our listeners who's coming.
Through the years, I've had so many people come here. And I really am shocked at how many people come here and say, hey, I lived on Avenue J in Midwood, or I lived on East 15th Street, or I went to DiFara every day after school. And well, anyway, Dom DeMarco Jr., a senior passed away 2 years ago. Dom DeMarco Jr. is not a kid. He's probably close to 60 years old. He will be here in-house all day, Sunday the 24th of March and Monday the 25th of March. He'll be here. So if you knew him from Brooklyn and you want to see him, come on in. He'll be here. We'll be glad to take a picture with you, whatever you want to do. And he and I will be making some pizzas. And the reason I called him out here to make these pizzas is because when Dave Portnoy came, who I have to say is a great guy. I loved him. He couldn't have been any nicer to us. But he said he thought our pizza was a little bit thicker. So when he left, I called Dominic on the phone. I said, did you change any recipes since I was there? He said, no. And I said to him, are you still using the same amount of dough when you make the 18-inch? He said, yeah. I said, well, you got to come out and we got to make some pizzas because Dave thought that ours was a little thicker. So anyway, I'm going to take some pictures and we'll send them to Dave.
That sounds like
maybe we could get him back. He only came back to 2 places from what I could see or what I hear. But I'd like to get him back here. He's such a great guy. Helped out so many pizza guys and other businesses. He's on the top of my list for being a good person, and I'd like to see him again.
Well, before we turn it over and get into March Madness with our guest for this show, you had a guest here recently, a former boxing champion walked in. Tell our listeners who was here.
Oh, my good friend B-Hop, Bernard Hopkins, a fine, classy guy, a classy gentleman, top of the deck guy. He was so nice. He went around with everybody taking pictures and signing autographs. He's just that way. He's just the nicest guy.
What else you want to tell listeners about Dom's before we get into March hoops?
Well, the last thing I want to tell them is what I said before, If you like good Italian food and you like wines, I didn't even talk about wines. We have a great wine list at prices that won't break the bank. In fact, they're so cheap, they'll knock your socks off. You got to come over to Dom's or they're missing the boat.
And we also have, because this show will be out before the next Tuesday, the 26th, 6:30 to 8:30, a trivia night back here on the patios. Those have been going well.
Oh, the trivia night. We're packing them in, huh?
Man,
I never even gave a thought to trivia night, Tommy, till you told me. But a lot of people love it.
They do. So if you want to give the email address out. Do you have it? If not, I'll just put it in the show notes.
It's Slice and Sip podcast at Dom DeMarco's.
At Dom DeMarco's.
By the way, and if anybody has any questions about anything about Dom DeMarco's or anything that you think I could answer, just email us at sliceandsippodcast at domdemarcos.com. We'll be glad to answer any and all questions on the air.
Well, this is our third podcast, and it's going to be our third one with guests, and we also have somebody that's been the same amount of times with us. That's your brother, Mike. He's back here with us once again to help talk about some hoops. So your phone all of a sudden blows up when you do this podcast. All your friends want to come on your show, which I think is great. We got two great ones here today.
Oh, we got the best.
We do.
We got them here today, buddy.
We do. The host of VSIN Prime after 16 and a half years of the Las Vegas Review-Journal as a sports columnist, and on top of 10 years, he was covering UNLV basketball. The past 7, he has co-hosted the Las Vegas Sports Line, a sports betting show on ESPN Radio. Before that, he's from my area, a beat writer for the 2 Chicago Bulls NBA championships, the Bears, and my beloved White Sox. We welcome in, who is it?
Matt Youmans.
Matt Youmans is here. And with him, we have the co-host of VSIN tonight, the Look Ahead and Long Shots Golf Podcast, writes a weekly golf column and provides NFL and college football write-ups. He worked for the Indiana Pacers, the Firebirds, and Indiana University. And that would be
Wes Reynolds.
We got Wes and Matt with us, and Mike, to talk about some March Madness. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Dom DeMarco has been one of my favorite spots for many years, and I second what Al said about Bernard Hopkins. Met him many years ago covering the boxing beat, and Bernard could not have been a better guy, so it's great that Al's got him hanging out here at Dom DeMarco's.
Wes?
Thanks to Al for inviting me to take part in this in terms of being out here at this fabulous facility. I haven't been out here for a few years, so nice to be out here again at Dom DeMarco's.
Gentlemen, let's start here, and we can all just kind of rotate around and go. Before we get into just betting lines and predictions and all that, Matt, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts overall on the brackets? Do you like it? Do you think it should be changed? Do you like where things are or no?
It's always a clown show with the NCAA selection committee, and they make various mistakes. But, after the first 24 hours, you got to get past it and just focus on the games and try to find the best bets and pick the winners, because there's no point in bitching about what the committee did wrong. It's always fun to complain about it for a while, but then you have to move on and just focus on the brackets. I mean, there are several matchups here that I like, and I think we're going to be able to find some best bets. I hate that the committee matched up James Madison against Wisconsin in the first round, because I wanted to bet on both of those teams. I thought they were both going to be play-on teams in the tournament, and now they're playing each other. Certain things like that I don't really like. But, we'll talk about the brackets in general and some of the predictions, but I'll let Wes jump in here with his thoughts.
Yeah, and Wes, before you do that, the only thing I want to say is I do agree with the people that were on television with the selection show. The Mountain West absolutely was not given the due credit it deserved. I don't know what the committee was looking at, but that not only just irked me, it really upset me that they put 2 of them in a playoff game that should not be there. And New Mexico wins the tournament and find out they had to win it just to get in the tournament. They should have been at least a 7, 8, 9 seed in my eyes.
Well, here's the point. I actually think the Mountain West should be happy with what the committee did. You got 6 teams in the tournament. The Big East got 3.
That
right?
is a point.
So instead of complaining about the seeds, go out and win the games and prove your point by winning the games.
True. Wes?
Well, I concur that I think there was a little bit of underseeding here. Actually, the team that probably got overseeded might be San Diego State. I don't know if they should have been a 5 seed. Now, I don't think Boise should have been a 10 seed. I think that was absolutely ridiculous. And I don't think New Mexico should have the same seed as Duquesne. And, Duquesne, who obviously got in the tournament winning the A-10 automatic bid, the committee chair last night was like, yeah, New Mexico had to win the Mountain West tournament to get in. I was like, wait a minute.
Right.
But to Matt's point, go out there and win games, because the Mountain West, with the exception of the Aztecs last year, obviously going to the national championship game, they've been a flop in this tournament. And now's the time to go prove it. But other conferences have been flops in this tournament, too. My conference, the Big Ten, hadn't won a national championship since the early 2000s. Mateen Cleaves and the Flintstones for Tom Izzo and Michigan State. So once the games start, all of the debate, because when I have the instantaneous reaction to the bracket, I was like, how'd Virginia get in? over St. John's or over Pittsburgh, who beat them by double digits, or over Indiana State or over Oklahoma. But there's always that one team, though, that everybody's like, oh, maybe they shouldn't be in. And I usually want to bet them in their first game. But now with Virginia and Colorado State, it's like you got two disrespected teams.
Exactly.
So I may end up leaving that alone, just play the under.
Mike, quickly from you, how much madness do you think there's going to be? Do you see a lot of first-round upsets, or do you think it's going to be chalk?
I found a lot of underdogs in the first 2 days, Tommy. But I'm looking at it, and there's like maybe 16 teams as double-digit favorites, and some of them even 20 points or more. I haven't seen that in years. So, but I still feel that there'll be maybe up to 10 teams that have a legitimate shot to win this championship. But like I said, I marked down like maybe like 18 games, and like 13 are underdog plays. So I think you'll see a lot of those top teams get, they might get by the first round, but after that, I think there's going to be some real tight games, and anything can happen in this.
Let's go here real quick. We'll start with you, Mike, since you're on the mic. What's your lowest seed you have winning a first-round game? 10 seed, 14, 15? I'm sure it's not a 16, but what's your lowest seed you got winning a first round? Or Matt, do you know, or Wes, if you guys kind of know what your lowest seed is you guys got winning a first-round game?
I like Drake. I don't know what seed are they, Matt?
Yeah, I've got Drake as a 10 and McNeese State as a 12. Those are the two lowest seeds I have winning.
Wes?
I think I have maybe 3 double-digit seeds. I have the winner of the Boise, Colorado game. Usually that team that wins in Dayton always wins that second game. So I think they knock out Florida. Florida's big man actually got hurt in the SEC tournament. So I think they advance. I did even, we'll get to the game later when we break down the bets, but UAB as a 12 seed advancing over San Diego State. Also have Drake, like the Italian stallion over here. And I believe I had New Mexico. New Mexico as well advancing in the first round. But, yeah, usually you'll find a few of those double-digit seeds advance, but you don't want to totally go bananas.
Yeah,
with
I
it.
took New Mexico as well, and the one I was talking to the guys before we started was I took Samford because I know KU is going to play their guys, but if one of those guys gets sick or gets hurt again or they don't have no depth, I think they could run into a buzzsaw. I think that's my prediction for lowest seed, so I was going to go there. You almost picked that one, Matt? Let's go here, guys, getting into the betting side of it. We'll just go around. Matt, I'll start with you. Give our listeners the 1 or 2 first-round games that you really like on the spread.
Okay, got several of them. I actually played Morehead State plus 13.5 against Illinois. If you look at the recent history of the Big Ten tournament winners, it's been pretty ugly in the NCAA tournament the following week. I could go through the details, but then we'd have to talk about Purdue losing to Fairleigh Dickinson last year. We don't want to do that. So Morehead State plus 13.5, but I think that number's down to 12 now. I'd still play it. I think the Illini, there's always a hangover from winning these major conference tournaments. And last year, and here's the thing, the public gets really excited about the teams that they see win the major conference tournaments. And we're seeing it with New Mexico now. Everybody loves New Mexico. And the Mountain West, I guess we could call a major conference since they got 6 teams in, right?
Yeah.
But what happens, and it happened last year, was every team that won a major conference tournament last year got knocked out relatively early in the NCAA tournament. People forget the UConn did not win the Big East tournament last year and then rolled through the NCAA tournament, winning all 6 games by double digits. Sometimes you're better off not winning these conference tournaments. And actually, I like to fade the teams, a lot of the teams that did. So Illinois is one of the teams I'm looking to fade a little bit here. I'm not picking Morehead State to win the game outright, but I took 13 points. Also, Drake over Washington State. Now, when I bet this last night, Drake was a 1.5-point underdog. And as we sit here and tape this podcast, Drake has moved to a 1.5 or 2-point favorite.
Whoa.
Over Washington State. Tucker DeVries, who's the coach's son, he's probably going to be a star in this tournament. And that's one of the names to keep in mind here. I've got Drake actually making a run all the way to the Elite 8. So that could be boom or bust. They could knock that in the first round, or I could, they would say you can look like a genius or you can look like a jerk. There's a fine line. McNeese State, I played plus 6 over Gonzaga. This McNeese team is really good, and Will Wade's a hell of a coach. 30 and this team's 30-3, 17-1 in the conference, and they got Shahada Wells, who's a transfer from TCU, who's an outstanding guard. He scored 36 against UAB, 30 against Michigan this year. This is a good 3-point shooting team at 38.8%. I think they're going to make the Zags sweat it out in the first round.
And you know what else,
If
man,
not-
out there as well is, they got Will Wade, who's quietly won 31 games, so to speak, and has been in the tournament and been deep in the tournament. He's not going to be afraid of Mark Few.
That's right. Maybe Will Wade could be the next Louisville coach, Wes. Who knows? How about Clemson plus 2.5 over New Mexico? I took this last night because I was kind of reading the room, or taking the temperature of all the handicappers out there in the public, and everybody loved New Mexico. I didn't hear one Clemson play last night, and I said, okay, I'm going to go with Clemson because Clemson looks so bad in the ACC tournament, and New Mexico looks so good in the Mountain West. And I actually think this Clemson team's a lot more physical than the Lobos, who really rely on Jalen House and Jamal Mashburn Jr. to shoot it well. Hey, New Mexico beat a San Diego State team that had one player scoring double figures, and the Aztecs shot 4 for 20 from the three-point range. And despite that, San Diego State still had the lead with 5 minutes to go in the game. I'm not totally impressed with the Lobos, and I think Clemson might be the play there. Also, UAB plus 7 over San Diego State, and I just talked about the Aztecs. Those are 5 plays I've got right now, but I've got a lot more than 5, but we'll start there.
Wes, what about you, first round?
Matt and I have a couple overlaps here, so I'll just touch on them briefly. Drake, who's now the favorite, I'd still lay small money line here over Washington State. It is very rare that you get like the middle major team that has more tournament experience than the major team. Washington State hadn't been in a tournament in years, and they're very good, very well coached. Cal Smith will be a hot coaching candidate, certainly as the carousel keeps on going and going on a daily basis. But Drake last year, if you remember, they lost to Miami, who made the Final Four. Drake was up 8 with about 5 minutes left to go, and then just kind of fell apart at the end. So I think that you've got like a little redemption story here, because it's like, okay, we're not going to let that happen to us again here. And coach's son, Tucker DeVries, Darian DeVries, the head coach there. So look, the Valley was a good league. Indiana State got left out, was a sore spot with me. I thought they should have had 2. But anyway, I think that they have the experience here, so I would say Drake. I'm starting with the Thursday game first. I also played Morehead State like Matt did. Morehead State has an issue turning the ball over, but the thing with Illinois defensively, they don't really force turnovers. They kind of let you run what you want to run offensively. And Morehead, even though my alma mater, Indiana, was down, they led the whole game at Indiana until the last possession. So they could have won in Assembly Hall. That was a team that I think was pretty dominant in the Ohio Valley. So looking at the Thursday games, I think I might have more Fridays at this standpoint. But kind of looking, just eyeballing this, I'm going to be on a couple more of like the derivative markets, the first halves and whatnot, and some of the totals as we get closer to game day. But I'll go to the Friday games first in terms of what I bet. I did go ahead and bet Baylor. I'm usually on more dogs than favorites, but I bet Baylor laying 13. I'd still lay 13.5 against Colgate. This is a Colgate team that's been to the NCAA tournament 4 straight years, won the Patriot League 4 straight years. But this is a down team. Like Matt and I were actually watching the Patriot League semifinals in the circuit book together, and it was like, man, this team's not as good as they've been in the past. And I think Baylor, just too much athleticism, could run them out. I did also bet UAB plus the points. A total I have, and it's on the move here. Eventually there's going to be buyback. They opened College of Charleston in Alabama at 168.5. That should be like 175. That's what it should have been on the opener, and that's going to be, I think, a track meet. Alabama's going to get 100. I got to think Charleston's going to get 80 plus. I don't think they're going to. You can't really change your identity. Like, you can't change your spots necessarily. It's like, oh my God, we're matched up against a major program now. You got to run what you run,
That game, Wes, is one of the first round matchups I'm intrigued about. As you said, they're going to get up and down the floor, both teams. And if Alabama's not making shots, this could be a 95-97 game down the stretch. And, and Charleston could lately sneak one out. I like Alabama to win the game, but I can see this game getting a little bit closer, and I think that total should be up with where you're saying.
If a 10 shows again, because I think I'm seeing 9.5 mainly on the screen, if a 10 shows again, I think Charleston's worth a take there, because Alabama, look, defensively, that's why there's a couple of these teams that are so elite offensively that I don't know if I trust how far they can go, like in Alabama, like in Illinois, that can score with anybody. But can you get stops, when the shots aren't falling? And that's what really concerns me about this team. A couple others very quickly. I actually am on opposite sides of Matt. I do like New Mexico here, so I might be on the bulk of the sides, because the one thing I worry about with Clemson, who's I think very well coached and can make threes, and a big guy can step out and shoot, is against a really athletic backcourt that's a veteran backcourt like Jamal Mashburn Jr. and Jalen Howes and Dent and those guys. I think New Mexico is the more athletic backcourt, and I worry about Clemson keeping those guys in front of them and keeping them away from the paint and keeping them from driving to the rim, and that's what concerns me. And now you are seeing New Mexico as a favorite. Now, I think if a 3 shows on this game, you'll get buyback on the Clemson side for sure, but yeah, looking forward to delving into these games as we get closer. I'll be betting, first half totals, and we'll be having first half under 63.5, and it's 30-32 on the last possession on Thursday afternoon. Like, oh my God, I don't want to lose the first play here. And, so that's what you do. These numbers are tight, and these numbers get tighter and tighter as the week goes on.
Mike, before we go to you, I will say this to all the Drake fans out there. I hope you enjoy Darren DeVries, because this is probably the last time you're going to see him. Somebody's buying him into a bigger job after this tournament's over.
There is actually a rumor out there about keep an eye on Iowa.
Mike, what do you like first round?
All right, Tommy, I agree with my friends here with Morehead State and Drake. Now, I haven't made any bets yet like my boys here have, but
Mike, you've got like 18 games, and I think I only disagree with one of them, so that's pretty. Hopefully, we're both on the same page.
We're on the right track.
Well, he's picked the Super Bowl right on, so go ahead.
I'll give you 3 that I think can win outright, even though there are more. I like NC State plus 4.5 or 5. I'm not sure what it is now. I feel they could get the best of Texas Tech. I also like James Madison with Wisconsin. I think they can beat Wisconsin in that game. And the other one I like is UAB over San Diego State. I think that they're a live underdog. Like Matt said, I wrote down 18 out of the 32, and 13 are underdogs, and 5 are favorites. So I like the dogs anyway in the first couple rounds. You don't know. Some of these teams are rested, haven't played in a little while. Some have played as late as yesterday or Saturday. So I like the fresher teams, or the teams that are on a nice winning streak of some kind. So, but we'll see. 1 year, like I was saying to Matt earlier, with this March Madness, they call it madness for a reason. It's hard to predict, the up and down, right to the end, who's fouling. All different things can happen. The referees play the biggest part, but you just got to hope you're lucky and on the right side, But as the games go, they'll get tighter and tighter. The point spreads will come down. But like I said, I've seen several over 20. I haven't seen that in years. So what does that say? There's some real good teams and some very bad teams.
One of the things I always do with March Madness is if I'm a former coach, I look at it from a coaching standpoint, because I know some of these coaches cave when the pressure hits and they make the wrong decision, which costs their team the ball game. They can have all the talent in the world, but if they don't coach them the right way, they'll coach them right out of the tournament. I've seen it happen time and time again, so I always look at where the coaches are. I love the coaching matchup between Andy Kennedy at UAB and Dutcher at San Diego State. 2 guys that are a little bit opposite each other. Andy Kennedy's hungry for a bigger job. Brian Dutcher may be on the move as well, is what I'm hearing. He could be moving too. So that coaching matchup is intriguing me. I'm excited to watch that game.
What gets me? It just happened last week in a Virginia game when you got like less than 10 seconds to go and you're up 3 and you don't foul. Tony Bennett did it last week. NC State hit the 3, and then they end up beating them. And he's been around way more than all of us. He should know better. And Calipari's another guy that doesn't know how to foul. But I'm just saying, you get those mistakes that happen that shouldn't happen.
So let me fouling with up 3 in the foul. I've talked to many of my friends that are Division I coaches, and they've all told me the same thing. If we practice it, we do it. If we don't practice fouling up 3, we won't do it, because we're debating whether or not they're going to be able to get the rebound. If we haven't practiced it, I'm not comfortable with it. To me, I think you got to foul whether you practice it or not. Why would you even allow a team to have an opportunity to tie you up?
Only thing I can say about that is if you are not practicing that, you're an idiot. Right?
Yeah, it's a good point.
It comes up so many times during the course of a season, you have to practice. Yeah.
Let's go here. Mike, I'll go back. We'll start with you. How many number 1 seeds you got in the Final Four? Or do you see making the Final Four?
Who's it? Purdue, Houston?
UConn and North Carolina.
Okay, I like UConn. I like Carolina. I'll leave out Houston, and I'll leave out Purdue.
So you got 2. Matt, how about you?
Purdue.
My Final Four is UConn against Carolina and Kentucky against Creighton. So I got 2 of the 4. Purdue's going to have to prove it to me. I'm not going to pick Purdue to go to the Final Four. You got to see it to believe it. And I've got Carolina upsetting UConn. Now I know I'm not going to argue with anyone about UConn being the best team. It's clearly the best team, but you got to be the best team on that night.
Right.
Carolina's actually got the guns. That's the type of team that could beat UConn. There's very few that can. I think Purdue could maybe beat UConn if they get the shot. Carolina could. There's very few teams that can. But I don't want to pick, the clear number one team to win the tournament, even though I've got futures on UConn and North Carolina and Kentucky. I've got Carolina over Kentucky in the final game.
Matt, how many number ones do you have in the final? Or Wes, I'm sorry, how many ones?
I only have one, actually, and Matt knows where it is. It is the Purdue Boilermakers, who I think have actually the easiest draw.
They do have the easiest draw. I will agree with you.
Now they had an kind of easy draw last year, and they got beat by a 16 seed. But if Purdue gets knocked out, it's not going to be because of what happened last year with bad shooting, because they can really shoot the three this year. They're over 41%. Last year, you could kind of tell that it's like if they're not hitting shots, they're in big trouble, even against a much less talented team. Now, one thing about Matt Painter, who I defend, I'm the resident Matt Painter defender on college basketball Twitter, he sometimes can make tactical errors. He actually did make one on Saturday in the Big 10 semifinal against Wisconsin. He put Zach Edey on the inbounder. It makes sense to put a big guy on the inbounder. Well, it also makes sense to have a big guy at the rim on a drive to be your best shot blocker or shot alterer, as it were. He had a couple other big kids on that team. He could have put somebody else on the ball. So, Matt can sometimes get a little bit tight in those situations. But I like Purdue this year. I think the defense, the way they shoot the ball. Now, it's going to be interesting with the Boilermakers, how they officiate Zach Edey. Because Zach Edey, there's people that think he either gets fouled every time, the Purdue partisans certainly, or that he gets away with murder because he brings that elbow across, which a lot of officials in the NCAA tournament go call that an offensive foul. In the Big Ten, they do not. Zach Edey, actually, I read, he has shot 100 more foul shots than any other player in the NCAA tournament. That's a lot. I know that's over, it's 30 games. That doesn't seem like a lot, but that's a lot. And, that does make a difference. So Purdue, I have in the Final Four, also have Kentucky, who I think, in the South region, they get 2 seeds above them, Houston and Marquette, that got some injury questions. Kolek with Marquette and Houston, just their depth in general. So I think that this sets up nice for Kentucky. In the East region, I understand UConn. UConn, I actually think, has the toughest draw of the 1 seeds, but yet they're the biggest favorite. I haven't seen anybody not put UConn in their Final Four, and I guess there's a good reason why, but I'm going a little Oppo Taco here, and I'm going with Auburn.
I'm with you.
Auburn, the 4 seed. I think Auburn, because Auburn has the big kid that can deal with UConn's big kid. Johnny Broome, really athletic, and could maybe get him in foul trouble. So I like Auburn as the 4. In the West, the West was the hardest for me because there's not really a team I love out of that region. But I ended up going, I think you're going to get a rematch in the regional final. Caleb Love from Arizona against his old team, North Carolina. There's a little bit of bad blood. That was kind of addition by subtraction for Carolina. Between Caleb Love and R.J. Davis and Armando Bacot. But I like Arizona coming out. Final year of the Pac-12. So I have a 4, a 2, a 3, and a 1.
I'm with both you guys. I'm with your side, Wes. I have Auburn, Arizona, and I have Matt's side of Kentucky and Creighton on the other side. So I have no number ones.
Purdue and Creighton was my Elite 8, and I have a future also on Creighton. So I've got 2 of them in that region with Purdue and Creighton. But Creighton certainly could make it. They were a bad call away from making the Final Four last year.
I'll say this. The 6th man in the NCAA tournament is the officiating. Depending on how it's officiated, it can change an outcome of a game real quick. Let's go here, guys. What number 1 seed do you think goes out the earliest? I'll go first. I think it's Houston. I would not be shocked if A&M gets there to second round and they knock them off because they are banged up. I know they defend it, but I just think Houston's a team that could make the first exit number 1s.
I agree with you. And actually, I was saying before Houston got blown out by Iowa State in the Big 12 tournament title game that Houston was the team I was going to look to fade first of the 1 seeds. Now, I do have Houston getting by Texas A&M in that second round. And that might not even be A&M. It could be Nebraska. But I've got Houston losing to Duke in the Sweet 16, and I almost had Houston losing in the second round. But, yeah, there's not much depth, and I think it's a team that's really wearing down. And, also when you talk about offense, Houston's so good defensively, but they can struggle to score. And I think that's going to come back to haunt them here. But depth is a big problem. Don't have a lot of size either. Of the 1 seeds, I think Houston's the weakest.
Mike?
I agree with Matt. Yeah, they're not big in size. They're mentally strong and they're tough physically too. But with the injuries they have, if they had no injuries, I'd say they win it all. But with those injuries, I think they go out.
Wes?
Yeah, same here for me. And Houston, look, very, very similar profile to the team that beat them on Saturday, which is Iowa State, which is like they put so much in defensively that you see the fatigue on the offensive end, and it's kind of the opposite of most teams because it's like it takes more energy to play defense than it takes to play offense. So sometimes these teams, they put it in on offense, and then they can't guard a lick. Houston is one of those teams that can, so is Iowa State. But I think when you're that reliant on defense, it's still about who's going to make shots at the clutch moments, and Jamal Shedd certainly can do that. But I wonder just how, if this team, sometimes teams run out of energy and they run out of gas. You saw that with Houston last year against Texas in the Sweet 16. They just absolutely ran out of gas.
Wes, I'm going to keep it with you, and then I'll go to Matt. First round matchups, what is your pick, like your sure pick? Which one is it? I know there's no such thing as a sure bet, but
in
which
terms
one is it?
in terms of like sure with the spread
With
or
the
just
spread.
to win?
No, with the spread. What's the one, the number one game you go, this is the one I like the most with the spread or against?
My
what's your lock?
my lock of the year here. Yeah, because like a lot of it, it's basically the same thing for me. Where I play it the same. I don't play them in different increments. I'm going to go with Drake over Washington State. I think that they're going to get through a team that's got experience in the NCAA tournament that should have beaten Miami last year and then just absolutely melted down in the final few minutes. But now with, you learn from experience, you learn from bad experiences is to not do it again. So, two really good coaches here that run really good stuff. These are two smart teams as well. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of dumb mistakes on either side, but I think Drake takes out Washington State. The market's got it right, making them the favorite right now.
Mike, what's your lock?
UAB over San Diego State.
What's that line? 7?
+7.
Okay.
I know San Diego State was in there last year in the final, whatever, but I like the way UAB plays. I like the coach. I think 7 is just too much. I think they could beat this team.
What about you, Matt? What's your lock?
Okay, so my lock is Wes took my first answer. I did bet Drake +1.5 over Washington State, and I've got Drake going to the Elite Eight. Mike took my second answer because I also played UAB +7.5 over San Diego State. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to go with Morehead State +12, 12.5 over Illinois as a best spread play of the first round. Those are my top 3.
Okay, Matt, let's wrap it up. Start here with you. Overall thoughts on spreads and the whole tournament in general. Give me your final thoughts.
I can't wait to get Graham's meatballs and the Big Apple pizza today.
He's waiting for the food here as soon as we get done.
That's what I'm looking forward to. Now, this tournament is as good as it gets, and a lot of times, your bracket's either going to be a boom or a bust. You're going to get a lot of this stuff right, or it's going to be one of the worst brackets you ever did.
What team scares you the most, but you've advanced them?
Well, I think anytime you got Purdue advancing a long way through your bracket, you got to be concerned.
You think it's Purdue?
So Wes is in big trouble over here.
If it's me, I got Kentucky in the Final Four, and they scared the hell out of me.
Well, that scares me too. I've got Kentucky in the Final Four. I said, I don't know if I can have Kentucky versus Purdue in the Final Four. I can't do that, but I think the surest thing, and a lot of people are going to lean on this, is UConn is going to get to the championship game, right? I wanted to be a little bit different because, hey, think about a year ago. Who thought that Miami, Florida Atlantic, and San Diego State would be Final Four teams? And all the top seeds are basically, UConn was a 5 seed last year too.
Yeah.
All the top seeds essentially wiped out by the time you got to the Elite Eight. So this is a very unpredictable tournament, but it's the best tournament in the world.
Mike, what team scares you the most? And give me your final thoughts.
Well, I love March Madness. It's so much better than the NBA. Every game, these kids play their heart out. A lot of them go right down to the wire. Like I said, it's the best. I do away with the pro basketball. But what team that scares me as far as I'm against?
The team you advanced in your bracket, or have you done a bracket yet?
No.
Okay, so you don't have to worry about what scares you the most. We got your final thoughts. But is there a team that might scare you if you were going to put them in the bracket and advance them? Or do you haven't looked at it? Purdue. You're with Purdue. Wes, everybody's, against your Purdue.
I know.
So I know Purdue's not the team that scares you. What team scares you?
Yeah, imagine that. The Indiana alum riding or dying with Purdue here. But they were my pick last summer. I think that this is going to be similar to Virginia a few years ago when they got embarrassed and beaten in the first round and then returned pretty much everybody and then ended up, cutting the nets down. Now, they had to get some lucky breaks along the way, including, ironically enough, against Purdue there in the Elite Eight. But, yeah, so that's going to happen. But I guess the team that might concern me the most, the region that concerns me the most is the West region, because I'm not all in on Carolina. I'm not all in on Arizona, even though I have Arizona going to the Final Four. I didn't really love anybody in that region. So I think that's an absolutely wide open region. Ironically enough, North Carolina is the only number one seed not favored in the betting market to win their region. That, I believe, is Arizona. So, maybe a contrarian number one seed, if you will, in the Tar Heels. But just final thoughts, obviously, for bettors, pace yourself. It's long days, long weeks, knowing when games are going to be tipping off and getting in there in terms of getting in your first half bets or your second half bets and keeping that in mind with those markets. And look, it's not just the NCAA tournament. That's what's going to drive the bus. But look, there are NIT games up this week. I think the women's tournament is actually going to have the biggest handle it ever has had because of Caitlin Clark in Iowa, and the ratings have been up for women's basketball. All the books in Vegas, especially and around the country, are going to book this thing. So no shortage of bets to make out there in college basketball for March Madness.
Well, you read my mind because I was going to end with this. UNLV or Princeton?
Ooh, that's actually a tougher one than you would think, though, because there's the rumor that the Princeton coach, Mitch Henderson, who actually played high school football against in Culver Academy in Indiana, and Mitch Henderson may be taking the Stanford job. He's certainly going to be lined up for that. So tough, long trip for the Rebels, but the Rebels hadn't played in the postseason. I think they're going to be motivated. I think they hang in the number with the Tigers.
Mike, UNLV or Princeton?
Princeton.
Matt?
Those teams actually met in the NCAA tournament in the late 90s, and Princeton won. You remember that, right?
I do remember that.
I think Bill Bano
like it was yesterday.
Bano was a UNLV coach,
he was.
Right? So Rebels got to fly to New Jersey and play an NIT game, and you got to think the motivation level is going to be low. I hate to say it, but I'd probably go with Princeton there.
If Boone's ankle is healthy, which I haven't heard if it is or not, but if it's healthy, I'm taking the running Rebels all day long.
Maybe first half, by the way.
Oh, take Rebels first half.
For UNLV, because it's a long trip.
Yeah.
They're going to have the energy and the adrenaline early, and Princeton has to recover from, they blew a game. Well, they were down. They had to come back against Brown, but they were clearly the best team in the Ivy League this year and ended up disappointing.
Well, gentlemen, thanks for coming on the show. Once again, Mike Scalleat, he's with Albert. He's with us every show. I think we just make him a regular. Bring Mike in here every time we do it. We want to thank Matt Youmans and Wes, you guys from VSIN. Thanks for coming on Slice and Sip podcast and an Albert show. Albert, wrap it up for us. What do you want to close with?
Come out to Dom DeMarco's and have some really good food at the right prices.
And until next time, when we bring on Dom DeMarco Jr., stay tuned for that show on Slice and Sip podcast.